Hey, good morning, gang, and welcome to this week's Morning Coffee and a Thought brought to you by Wings of Faith Ministries here in Sarnia. I hope you have your coffee. I have mine right here. Is it just me, or has 2025 so far been a year of just utter chaos? We have new global alliances. We here in Canada are now in a trade war with those we considered to be our neighbors and friends for over 150 years. A lot of uncertainty and shifting sand out there. And of course, all this chaos is going to cause fear and apprehension in our lives. That's what I want to discuss this morning, and I want to look at two Psalms, Psalm 2 and Psalm 18. Some thoughts here that maybe can bring some stability, peace, and hope to our lives. First of all, before we get back to our thought, I want to remind you that Wings of Faith Ministries can be seen on Fridays beginning at 1 p.m. on our YouTube channel and on Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. on our Facebook page, and we hope that you will join us. If you like these videos and thoughts, we would ask that you would subscribe or like on the YouTube channel. Also, if you have a prayer request, if you want information or you want to make a donation to this ministry, you can do all of that at wingsoffaithministries.ca. And now back to our thought. Psalms 1 and 2 are considered to be coronation psalms for the Davidic dynasty starting with King David. We don't know exactly when these coronation psalms came about, but likely during the time of David or a little after. Psalm 2 is a very interesting psalm. We know at the time of David that Israel had a lot of uncertainty, a lot of chaos in that world, turmoil, and Israel was surrounded by enemies. To the west, along the Mediterranean coast, would have been the sea peoples. The Bible refers to them as the Philistines. To the east would have been the Ammonites and the Moabites. To Israel's south would have been the Edomites. And to the north would have been the Armenians and Syrians. And of course, just east of the Euphrates River would have been even larger empires. And so the nation was surrounded with uncertainty and shifting sand all the time. But in the midst of this, Psalm 2 brought comfort to the people of Israel, and I believe can bring comfort to us today. The psalm starts out asking some questions. Why do the rulers of this earth plot in vain? Why do they make conspiracies and plans, hoping to take advantage over one another? The psalmist asks this question because he knows that although they seem to be in charge, the one in heaven is really the one in charge. The psalmist will say that God laughs at them, at their conspiracies, at their plots, at their plans. Because not only was the Spirit of God in the rooms where these were being made, but God even looked deeper than that. He saw the hearts of those making the plans. So he knew what motivated the rulers of this world back then and also today. He knew what was in their hearts, what was behind all these conspiracies and plots. The psalmist will go on to say that I have established my king. In other words, God saying to the king of Israel or Judah at the time, I have established the ruler. And that psalm, Psalm 2, would have larger implications, certainly future ones, as it followed the Davidic line all the way to the Christ. Christ is in charge, not the rulers of this world. And although they plot and scheme and conspire, their plans, when they go against the plans and purposes of God, will be restrained or will be made utterly useless. And this is applicable today. We know that the rulers of this planet, whether they be presidents, premiers, dictators, whatever you want to call them, they can make all the plans they want to make and try and cause all the chaos they can. But in the final straw, it is God in Christ who is in charge of the planet. That's what the psalmist will say. I have installed my king. It also will go on to warn the kings of this earth not to rile up his anger. God can change the equation in just a moment of time with a single earthly event. I want to go a little farther than Psalm 2, though. I want to go on to Psalm 18. We've talked about God's rule over the planet, but we also want to talk about God's activity in our lives as individuals and believers in Christ. In Psalm 18, the psalmist will say, God is my rock, he is my fortress, and he's my deliverer. God is my rock, that steady hand on my life. God is my fortress, the Hebrew word masuda, meaning God is my high ridge, my protection. But I like the third term, God is also my deliverer. Why? Because that speaks that God is active in our lives. He's not just protecting us, but he's beside us, ready to deliver us from whatever fears or apprehensions that we may have. God is active in our lives. Christ will address this in his Lord's Prayer that he tells the disciples. He will tell them to pray each day, let your kingdom come. In other words, pray for God's rule on planet Earth. We should be praying that every day, that God's plans and purposes, his rule, will be fulfilled on the earth. Then the next line, let your will be done, here on earth as it is in heaven. In other words, we want to bring God's rule, God's plans, God's purposes here on earth just as they are done in heaven. It speaks of God being in charge in Christ Jesus, both in the global situation and in our lives, whether our apprehensions are and our fears are because of global situations, it could be work situations, family situations. Our God is there as our rock, our fortress, our masuda, and our deliverer, being active in our lives. These are the things we should center on in times of uncertainty. That despite what is going on and what schemes or plans or conspiracies are going on around us by the rulers of this world, an ultimate end is that God in Christ Jesus is in charge of this planet. And that's where our praying and our faith and our hope needs to be. It is God who brings peace to our hearts in times of fear and apprehension. That's the thought I want to leave with you this morning. No matter what we see going on around us, here as we begin 2025, know this, Jesus Christ as God's installed King, and he's in charge of this planet, no one else. Listen, have a wonderful morning, enjoy your coffee, and we'll see you again next week.